Um, Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Full House again. Great to be here. So my name is Theo, or Theo, if you speak French, and I'm the EY Americas Mining and Metals leader, but I'm also the EY Canada Mining and Metals leader. But today is not about me. Today is about this panel, and I will ask each panelist to introduce themselves shortly. The critical piece here today is that we're talking about critical minerals, basically minerals that are being used in battery manufacturing. And we will talk about why Canada actually has the opportunity to be a superpower in producing batteries. So let's start with Belinda. Quick intro.
Excellent. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Great to be here. So I'm the CEO and director of Lameco Metals. Our team is just about a year old now. We brought in a new team, a new board, and we are exploring and developing for natural flake graphite in southern Quebec, looking also to accelerate that by acquiring more assets and claims and being part of that movement to accelerate upstream junior mining companies like ours to the next level. And we also have a lithium project that we're earning our way into on the Nemaska Lithium Belt in northern Quebec. And it's great to be here and share some of the opportunities and the challenges of what we're doing. We're very much about being a people-first company and making sure that our communities are on this journey for critical minerals development here in Canada for a solution here in North America.
Cool. Go ahead, Kwasi.
Yeah, so Kwesi here. I'm based in London, and I was a mining engineer. So I used to wear a hard hat once, and I now do research. And I'm the head of metals and mining for Bloomberg NEF. So Bloomberg NEF is the primary research arm within Bloomberg, and we focus on energy, commodities, and the environment. And I think the role of my team is really to understand the opportunities for metals in the energy transition. And I'd like to end by also saying that if you don't get it from a farm, you get it from a mine, and you can look around you. Everything else, whether what you're wearing, whether the building you're in. So clearly, if the energy transition materials are not going to come from a farm, they'll come from a mine. And that's my role here, to really help you understand the materials that will make the transition possible.
Great. Yes, we used to say that in engineering school. If it can't be...
Which school did you go?
I went to engineering school in Polytechnique in McGill, in Montreal. And we used to say that if it can't be farmed, it has to be mined.
Except water.
Except water. That's true. Go ahead, Renata.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Renata Cardoso. I'm the Vice President of Sustainability and Low Carbon for Electra Battery Materials. We are also a junior, more into mining, but also into refining critical minerals. We are very close to commission our plant in Ontario that will be producing the first cobalt sulfate in North America. And we also are closer, even closer, this year we will be doing a demo plant on recycling battery materials here in Ontario as well. We have a project in Quebec, and we have a mine in Idaho, the US. And of course, our mission is to be the lowest carbon emissions producer of critical minerals, and specifically here for Canada, and help build the supply chain for North America.
Fantastic. Phil?
Hi, I'm Philip Gross, CEO of Snow Lake Lithium, and this is actually a dream come true for me because I have had a lifelong ambition to perform at the Calgary Stampede. It's not what I had in mind, but it'll do. Snow Lake Lithium is a Manitoba-based lithium project. We are hoping to bring it into production in 2025. But our real goal is that we have a fully renewable energy source. We're going for a fully electric mining operation, and we have access to a rail line. So our real ambition is, and we believe this is critical if you're going to be part of the EV supply chain, is to be as carbon neutral or even negative, if that's a terminology, as possible, so that we can literally be congruent with the ambitions of what everyone's trying to achieve here today in terms of energy transition. So that's who we are.
Thanks, Phil. So before we get going, I'd like to point out, as you can see, that these are very smart people and that we can still achieve diversity and be smart. I like to say that my panel is very diverse, as you can tell, and just want to give a round of applause for the diversity. So we decided to go by themes for the day, and you'll discover the themes as I go. But theme number one is really the time to market. We've heard a lot this morning about battery minerals and basically, do we have enough? Is it going to be in time? Will you get your Tesla truck in time? Because if you want to get it in time, we need to produce the material that gets into metals for that battery to happen. So for time to market, given that Kwasi and his team work a lot on research, I'm going to start with Kwasi and ask, are we going to be just in time, or is it going to be too late, or other people have to wait longer?
I mean, I hope we don't have to wait longer. But then obviously what the auto companies are realizing that the just-in-time model will not work when you have to deal with miners. And let's start with a few of the mining countries. So obviously Australia, Canada, top mining producers, and then you have the United States that extract a few of these metals. And then when we started thinking about this, we wanted to use the US as opposed to child for an analysis. And on average, you're looking at about 10 years between discovery and first production. And we sort of dug deeper into what makes it so difficult to get the permits in the US. And it kept going back to one thing, the mining laws of the United States, right? And we ask ourselves, how long have these mining laws existed for? And the current mineral laws in the US that governs permitting process has been in existence for 150 years without change.
Wow.
And probably different scenario in Canada, right? But then it's just a complexity that there are state laws, there are local laws, and there are federal laws, and you have to jump through all these hoops. And then on top of that, you have your social license to operate, right? So I think we started looking at Australia and Canada differently, where in Australia, for instance, part of the process the government had to initiate is that when the federal government classifies a project as critical, you're able to sort of jump a certain, bypass a certain processes and get that done. And I think that would potentially be good for Canada as well. But for now, given what we know, that it takes at least about 10 years between discovery and first production, it's really going to make the just-in-time model a very, very difficult one to achieve.
That's good to hear. Well, Belinda, will get to you because you have projects in Quebec for graphite and lithium. Have you felt that maybe the critical mineral strategy may help go faster on permitting?
Well, let's start with the fact that when I decided I wanted to get out of the gold business and into critical minerals, which was a decision, like an intentional decision, I chose to go back to Quebec where I went to school because of their critical minerals strategy. So it was a very deliberate choice, and to bring a team and to look for a business that needed a new team, which Lameco did. So that was the thought coming in. But we have a Quebec critical minerals strategy that is smart, and it has funds behind it that exists in no other jurisdiction. Fantastic place to operate. But there are still a lot of thresholds for us to get investment. So the bottom line is, a year later, with a great project, highly diverse, I have a majority female board, majority female management team, we do not have any Quebec funds invested in the company. In fact, we don't have any institutional investors. And I'm not speaking for all upstream mining companies, but I can tell you it's a very similar profile in their shareholder register. They may have one cornerstone investor coming in, but the reality is that we do not have the financing to be able to accelerate these projects through these archaic permitting systems that exist today. So even if we had the money, we're still working with old traditions. We don't have the money, so we're depending on retail investors to come in, and that is going to make everything move slow as it was before. So we need new models, Theo, and the great, I've been reading Albert Camus lately. He's a French philosopher, existentialist, and he says that tradition is a past that counterfeits the present. So we cannot be relying on tradition here. We have to be disrupting and personally taking that on to change the systems, to bring in new money and change these permitting timelines to be something smarter.
That's very good to hear. Phil, the idea of building Snow Lake in a way that it's low carbon, really borderline negative carbon footprint, do you have a sense that it's helping get the permitting faster, or is it the same?
So I think the low carbon idea really is about the fact that we're trying to be ahead of the curve. I believe very strongly that in the very near future, every EV is going to have a carbon impact number attached to it, like calories on a chocolate bar. Today's consumers are far more conscious and are far more engaged in these issues than a generation prior, or even the current generation. We are getting more and more engaged in these topics on a daily basis. And in order to achieve that, the OEMs, the manufacturers, are going to be pushing down on the raw material suppliers. And it's not so much about what the green premium, but it's about the fact that in order, we see Polestar as an example, as a European, Volvo subsidiary. They're coming out with the Polestar Zero. And the marketing on that has been overwhelmingly engaged with the consumers. Everyone is very much, in demand to say, yeah, we want, because as our current environment is that we want to have our cake and eat it too. So we want to have the nice car, but we also want to be able to minimize our carbon footprint. And today's technology, in terms of batteries and in EVs, puts us in a position where we can achieve that. So that's why our aspiration is in line with current technology. We have the hydropower, so that gives us a 99% renewable energy source. Electric mining is something that maybe we're slightly ahead of the curve, but it's going to be the norm and the standard because it makes sense. And being able to access, instead of shipping it around the world and shipping it back and trucking it, being able to access a rail line, puts us in a formidable position to be able to achieve that. And I think this is what the consumers want. This is what the market wants. I think we've reached that point. The name of this conference is not energy continuity, it's energy disruptors. We want to disrupt, we want to be able to change the way we're doing things and do it in a better fashion for ourselves and for our future generations.
Yeah, you talked about the rail. I'll get into infrastructure with Renata next. And for the plant that you have set up in Ontario, did you feel like there's enough infrastructure to support the downstream of the value chain? Or what do you guys think is still needed to get infrastructure right?
I think it's a great segue from Belinda, as she was talking about Quebec. In Ontario, our refinery that is almost 6 months to commission, our plan is actually to have a battery park. And we have some partners, but again, just like Melinda mentioned, it's very difficult to attract funds to finance, because there's a lot of synergies, potential synergies to have OEMs in the same place, to have the chemists, the battery producers close to us. We can share some infrastructure, logistical infrastructure. We can share waste management. There's a lot of opportunities. We do have support from Ontario government, but still, I think the main challenge, the main issue has been the capital markets. We can attract small investors, but the big investors are still concerned about the timing that we will be there at the market, and they would rather put money into the big companies in the end of the supply chain, the big ones, the OEMs that come here, than into us. And we are here, we are all the bottlenecks of the supply chain. We are the ones that will take longer to really meet the goal, the demand that is out there already. So yes, I agree. I think this investment piece is our main concern right now. We were invited by the Quebec government to be part of another battery materials park. Electra is in both materials parks in Canada right now. The Quebec Materials Park has already been able to attract $400 million, but still, you know, we are the smallest ones in there, and it's going to take some time. Some investors, they want a track record from us all before they really believe on us. And of course, we are building that. We are the entrepreneurs in this supply chain, and right now we happen to be the bottlenecks to that.
Yeah, that's Kwasi, you want to mention something around investors in general, like that you guys probably talk to?
Well, so I work for a data company, so obviously it has to be back with numbers. And then, just like Adam Grant said earlier today, that I want absolute feedback. If I'm sharing too much numbers, you can give me feedback by giving me a round of applause. So we do track the amount of money going into the energy transition every year, right? And last year when we ran this, the energy investment, transition investment, when we did it, $271 billion were invested in the EV industry last year. In the battery, it was almost $8 billion. In metals and mining, pretty much nothing, right? But then, as you rightly mentioned, metals and mining is beginning to look like it's going to be that bottleneck. And the key question we've been asking is that what will make mining that attractive thing? And I think there's always something we look to, right? Look at Asia if you always want to see the future of the battery industry. And you can see that, I mean, ultimately it didn't come down to the capital market. Government did play a role, but then it was really the downstream that started making moves into the upstream, and that really started drawing attention. And if you doubt me, the very day Elon Musk tweeted about lithium, you should have taken a look at what happened in the lithium stock market that day, right? So it's really when those downstream partners or downstream companies start going upstream to invest in that, we probably will see a lot more activity in there. We've seen the first ever Western auto company take equity in a lithium company or in a mining company, which is Stellantis, taking equity in Vulcan Resources and providing capital for the development of the project in Germany. So that is one model that we'll be looking at. But then I really do think that in the long term, it might not necessarily be the stock market. It might not necessarily be project financing from government. It really has to be a partnership where I think people are saying that instead of Elon Musk buying Twitter, he should probably buy Glencore. I don't know about that.
Well, that's actually a good joke because technically.
It's actually an article someone wrote, fact-based one, which my boss shared with me, by the way.
Yeah. So you mentioned something interesting around raising the money and, like the mining piece is not getting the attention yet, but the downstream is bigger. Belinda, you and I were talking early on, and Phil, I'll ask you the same question. Should lithium, graphite, and rare earth actually stay private? Will it get better attention than going public?
So I'm a little biased because we're listed on the NASDAQ. So
that's why I'm asking the question. You both listed. So
the reason why we listed is that this project, work had been done in 2018, and the resource was proven. And when I looked at this, I joined the team in 2021 at the beginning in January, and when I looked at the project, I saw, looking at the global situation and the full, what's going to happen in electrification in this fourth industrial revolution, is that the disconnect between supply and demand is, I would venture to say, the greatest dysfunction in a commodity market in history ever, because you have this insane organic demand that's come out of almost nowhere, and you don't have a supply. Nobody said the word lithium in a commodity context outside of ceramics or whatnot ever until 2018, 2019. And then suddenly you have, EVs taking off. You have the battery technology advancing at the pace of Moore's law. You have costs coming down, power going up, and you have the ability now to deliver an EV that is price parity or close to it with a combustion engine, and that's going to absolutely displace the combustion engine. So that demand is going through the roof, and the projections are only looking at EVs, but you have to start considering what happens to aviation, what happens to marine, what happens to energy storage. all of that is going to be premised on the lithium battery. So our strategy was we need to get to, it's not about finding the tons in the ground, because at the end of the day, lithium is a prolific element in the Earth's crust. It will be found now that we started looking for it, and we've only just started looking for it. But what's the strategy really is, let's accelerate, let's get to market so we can help build that and get those cars on the road and get that energy transition, kicked off and manifest. So from that point of view, there's no question. But going to the earlier point, the amount of money that's spent in China on a weekly basis in this sector is more than we spend in North America per year at the moment. If I was, it might be slightly, I might be exaggerating a little bit, but because I see last week they spent 14 billion, the week before they spent 6 billion. You see these projects here in North America. We're still struggling to even identify the pieces that will be necessary for this ecosystem to be developed. We're still working on it. So we're sitting here at the, at the mining end. There's the gigafactories being committed to. We have 13 new gigafactories in North America that are being committed to, but in between there, getting from us to them, there's still a big gap that needs to be filled, and there's a vacuum, and that vacuum is going to need capital, and that capital is going to come from markets, investors, OEMs, governments. There's going to have to be a correlating of resources to make this happen. Otherwise, I think it's an existential threat to our industry here in North America.
You want to add anything, Belinda?
Sure, I'll answer the question maybe differently, because if you look at where we are today, the companies are public because of this traditional model of you drill, you get great results, the market likes it, you get re-rated, you do a financing, then you do a study, then you get re-rated, and then you financing it, and you do that over and over and over again. And some people love that, and they love participating in that. Where we are today is natural flake graphite. There's been no reason to invest in it until now, because the market's been at equilibrium at 1 million, 1.4 tons produced for the last decade, because it's a very traditional market that is going into the refractory industry, crucibles, pencils. It is only because of the anode component of the battery that we're seeing a huge undersupply, massive, 8 million tons deficit by 2040. So what's happening is these graphite companies have been around for 10 years, and yeah, they might be sour-faced because they haven't been re-rated, because there's been no reason to invest in it. But what they have now is they got this book value of all the money they've put into that business. So to privatize that would be expensive. Yeah. So we need other solutions. We need to be creative. We need to be innovative. We need to come together. We need more consolidation. But the model of a single asset working inside a public company, I don't think is the right model. Now, I have 2 assets, and I'm looking to change that, and we've publicly said that. But it is how the model has been for many, many years. Many company and many people have created wealth by doing that. But this is different. And so we need to, I think the public markets are good, but they are not rewarding drill results. I know I'm experiencing it right now. And they're not even rewarding if you put out a pre-feasibility study, because what the market is now saying is, I think what they're saying is, we actually need bigger companies, more consolidation, and we need to know that your particular product is going to be bought by the customer. And that customer has very specific technical requirements for the lithium and for the graphite. So we do have to rethink how we operate as a public company. We have to rethink the traditional trajectory of how we raise money and going from simply a PEA to a PFS. Because what we did at Lameco is we went right into the metallurgy studies as a new team. That's where we're putting our money. The hard dollars, that isn't flow-through. Flow-through does something, but not everything. And that's because the customer wants to be able to see that you can get that 99.9% purity and how much of your graphite can feed into that particular market. So it's challenging, and I think the question is, maybe 10 years ago we should have been private, but that's not where we are today. So we have to deal with the deck that we have.
Okay. I'll switch to something that investors talk about all the time, this low-carbon ESG investment. A couple of weeks ago, we had the EY America's Mining and Metals Forum, and we had 2 sessions, one on just investors. So we had big banks. And then we had another one on circularity of the economy. So Renata, we don't have enough time to talk about the story of how first cobalt became electra battery material, but we know that you probably have some answers to why, for the first time actually, I see somebody VP low carbon, right? So what's the strategy around making sure that the material coming out of your plants are low carbon, but also thinking about the recycling piece, which, by the way, we haven't figured out. We're still going to pump these cars out, and they may not be taking the battery swaps. So what are you going to do with the batteries once they actually end of cycle? Do you want to comment on that?
Sure, I could speak about that for 4 hours, but I'm gonna take only 4 minutes at most. Circularity is here to stay. I think we all here have the opportunity as we do the energy transition and we change completely not only the energy sector but the transportation sector to really try to correct a lot of mistakes from the past where we were trying to solve a problem and creating others. So my entire recent career was with low carbon and mining. I have been with Vale my entire career, starting in Brazil, then I came to Canada, and then I moved into Electra, because what we see right now, what I really do believe is because of this situation where we are the bottleneck, we need to rely on the big guys. Investors are coming to us, regardless of our size. They go to Vale the same way they come to Electra, and they ask for our ESG ratings. If we still don't have that, they will ask a lot of questions about our policies and how we make sure we have the management systems to in place to make sure we are managing our environmental impact and social impact, and everything is in there, and we can respond to any grievances. We have the mechanisms and everything. So very early in the process, Electra is literally less than 1 year old. Okay, first cobalt was there before, but our business model is very recent, and we have already all the tools and mechanisms to comply with investors' requests on ESG. And what I believe even mostly is on the power of our potential customers. The same way they go to Vale, they come to Electra and they ask us about our carbon footprint. They ask about other things too, but we can't deny that this is the main topic, the top of mind for them. And they really want us to make sure and to provide third-party verification that our products will be low carbon. And I am 100% with that. And I do believe this is going to be it's not right now, but it's going to be a way to get funding for what we need to do. Because once we start showing off our contracts with the big guys, investors will come, definitely. They will see, we have a lifetime. The risks, we will de-risk a lot the company as it is. So, yes, we do have a lot of numbers already. We do have a lot of data. We do have a lot of policies. We are working on cultural training into that. So we have a workforce that is 100% committed to that. And I'm sure you heard this morning from Simon Moore, from Olivia Lazard, about how we see we are the bottleneck, but how we see that the next generations to come are really very much engaged into these new markets. They really want work with purpose. And that's also something that we are really investing a lot, bringing in, communities and trying to build capacity within Canada so people can really go into these industries, these new industries, and really add value to the transition. So I think it's,
Yeah, that's. I'll go back to Belinda and Phil before asking Kwasi around data on this. So the corporate purpose, the ESG rating, how has your experience been with investors on these two fronts? And I'll start with Belinda because I know Lumiko is big on corporate purpose, and you'll be talking next week about that too. So.
It's interesting. I rarely ever use the word ESG because we are thinking about our business from a mission perspective. And our purpose is to do something for Canadians working with the communities and especially with First Nations. And when we came together as a team, the vision was to say, what does a successful critical minerals company with raw natural resources look like 5 years from now? So if you ask me about time and the passage of time, that's how we work every day. We're like, where do we need to be 5 years from now? And I can tell you that some people will say, you're not the right leader for a junior, or you should be working for a bigger company. So that's when I know I'm being disruptive, when I get comments like that. Because you can't be disruptive without creating tension. So the purpose of this business is to do something that is meaningful and worthwhile, and that's how we make decisions. And I would like to talk about the First Nations aspect for a moment, because when I was starting this business, I realized, I looked at the map and I said, the Quebec Critical Minerals map isn't outlining the treaties, and it's not outlining the First Nations land. So that was my number one observation, and it should. And I said to Lee, who is Mohawk, and I said, I need help. I don't know the answers. I don't know how I need to do this properly, and I know enough to know that I don't know how that's exactly going to look. So that, to me, isn't ESG. That is me and other people deciding we're going to go out there and change things without knowing all the answers. And what she explained to me, and I think this is important because we're talking about accelerating things, from a First Nations perspective, time is about 7 generations close. Our land acknowledgement says that we need to acknowledge First Nations and land 7 generations ahead, but close being that's how we need to look at our impact. That's not ESG, that's purpose. That to me comes from the heart. And I think we need to go back to that place because climate change is about a just transition. We have to be bringing people along. We can't be doing it the way we did it before, and we need to bring that into the conversation. So that's what I talk to investors about. And the ESG naturally falls out of that because we are Eco-Logo certified, which is a Quebec exploration company, third-party certification. But I hope that answers.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I'll go to Phil because I want to understand, Phil, you actually the third company that I know of that publicly came out and said, we want to build low-carbon mines. Do you have a sense that it's being recognized by the investors or by communities around you?
So I think the concept of ESG has been slightly cheapened as a brand and recently. And I think we just have to revert to our better values in terms of what we want to achieve and what our ambitions are. So I try not to use the actual lexicon of ESG because it creates a certain, like we're almost paying lip service to it. I don't know that the investment community per se has an appreciation yet. Like I said, a lot of it is lip service. They all talk about ESG. They allocate certain funds to ESG. But whether they really, deploy the money primarily to ESG or primarily to profit centers is a bigger question. But I think that from our perspective, certainly, it's about getting ahead of the curve because I think all, the people controlling the capital are in between us and, let's say, the consumers. And the consumers are the ones who are, like I said, every day their view and their position on this is maturing. And you could see that clearly. And they're the ones who are going to demand the change. And they're the ones who are going to drive that. It's not going to be the people in between, and we're going to respond. They're going to have to respond to the consumer base and the consumer demand. And I call it consumers, but I mean the citizens. So that's what's really driving it. So if you look in North America as an example, The EV movement has not been because the OEMs have been pushing EVs down onto the consumers. It's the other way around. The consumers have overwhelmed the manufacturers with demand for EVs. They've said, we want to make a change. This is no longer acceptable. And the OEMs have been caught, off guard because they were slightly delusional about the idea of combustion engines going another century or so. But the consumers have said to them, no, that's no longer acceptable. So they have had to push down and say, okay, we will meet those demands, but they can't even come close to sating the appetite of the consumers. And that's why you're on a waiting list if you want an EV today, because they were literally caught off guard on that topic. So from our point of view, I think we are responding to what we believe is, the direction that the world is going in, and we believe that it's going in that for a very good reason, and everything else is going to have to fall in line with what at the end of the day, it's the consumers who control it, and the consumers this is what they are demanding now.
Okay. We'll talk a bit more about consumers and social awareness on, metals and mining in general. Kwasi, you guys, there's a lot of papers around greenwashing versus actually proper ratings and the variety of ratings. I read that probably 3-4 months ago, the variety of rating and which one is actually dependable. What do you guys see from the ratings and all the discussions? Is there a particular trend? And I know that, we can talk about how the war in Ukraine actually basically upset some of these trends.
Yeah, so before I talk about the other ratings, I probably should talk about mine first. So we do these rankings, or actually ratings every year, where we started with 50 mining companies and we focus on adaptability as an example, and we look at the asset level, which your portfolio risk to climate change. And then I had the privilege of sharing some of the results with a top mining company. And we're supposed to talk about it for 45 minutes. And he spent 55 minutes telling me how he hits analysts, he hits rankings, and he hits ESG ratings, right? So clearly I did a very bad job. But then you cannot blame him. Because it's become an alphabet of soup. There's RE100, there is everything. I mean, I can imagine a junior company with just 2 people in the ESG team trying to manage all the... Should get another head count. and trying to manage all this, right? But the thing is that I'll probably deviate, and a big part of what we do, so we're a commodities-focused team, so a big part of what we do is to try to look at what is happening in the market. And we feel that beyond just these ratings, there's actually going to be a market solution, right? And I always used green pricing or premium pricing as an example. It's always the price of the commodity that settles everything. We've seen it happening in the supply chains. So recently there's a battery company that is in the UK wanted to buy nickel in Indonesia. And before they signed the contract, the Indonesian company had to agree that they would power the mines and the smelters with renewable energy before they could enter into a contract. So the market is willing to pay a premium for these commodities that you're going to produce with carbon. So for me, it will be irrelevant whether you use a Bloomberg mining score ratings or use other ratings. I think the market will find a solution, and that is where the true value or the better value that you use will come in there.
Okay, that's a very good point. We were very thrilled when Graham asked that we set up a mining and metals panel for this event. Because I particularly don't believe that most people understand where the metals are coming from. The industry generally in Canada always agreed that we don't do enough campaigns and awareness around, where it's coming from. We've been publishing, and alongside the Bloombergs of this world, how many copper wires does it take to run an EV, or how much aluminum do you need for your solar panels and things like that. I'll start with Renata because I did see a documentary about Cobalt, Ontario, and maybe people in the audience do not know, but cobalt has been extracted in Ontario before World War I, and that's why there's a town in Ontario called Cobalt.
Yeah.
And Renata and the company are really operating around Cobalt, Ontario. Do you want to talk a bit about how you guys make the population in Canada as a whole aware of the importance of the metal?
Yeah, in the past, there is a city, a town called Cobalt in Ontario. It's very close from where we operate right now. We operate in Temiskaming Shores. It's not a mine. We don't have a mine there. Our cobalt copper mine is in Idaho, the U.S. So the refinery that we have there, in the beginning, first years, we are going to be receiving feed from DRC, which is another level of complexity to ESG. But let's stay with cobalt. Cobalt has a long history of kind of artisanal mining in Ontario, and by that time, it attracted a lot of people. And now it's more or less a dead town. A lot of people flew away. A lot of people stayed there, living in difficulties. There's not a lot of job opportunities, interesting job opportunities. When we announced that we would be restarting this refinery, it used to be a demo plant, and we are just making it up to scale. A lot of construction work going on. It raised a lot of interest, but also a lot of concerns, of course, because the previous operation there was artisanal, was not caring much about the environment, and that region, if you have not been there yet, it's beautiful. North of Ontario, a lot of lakes. It's an amazing environment. So need to be preserved, need to be really restored. And but we see that as, of course, we are dealing with remediation because it's in the same area where we are. But we are also dealing with a lot of people that believe in us, believe in our new mission to really start over, to review the reputation of mining. And how do we start that? We know, for instance, that around 14% of the global emissions are related to transportation right now. But it's not only this 14% that we are helping to reduce, right? To convert from the current engines to electric engines. We are changing the energy transition that needs to be a just transition is really going through many other sectors of society, and the energy sector is one that is going to be the most impactful. So we are bringing in very carefully 5 different indigenous groups that we are consulting with and are surrounding our site, along with, of course, the population that stayed there, that believed that this town would, in the future, be able to do a rebirth, actually. And there's a lot of communication, but I think we need to move away from communication. We need to really get to action and proving to these people and proving to the government as a mining sector that we can do things differently. We can change and we can really be much more aligned to the energy transition that we want for the globe. So we are trying to really work with the indigenous groups. They are doing a lot of studies that are helping us, and working with communities and our partners to change the reputation of that region and our business.
All right, we already close to the end. Phil, in 30 seconds or less, what's your message for the audience?
I think that from all the conferences that I've been to and all the discussions and dialogues that I've had, I think this is probably one of the best so far in terms of the conversation, in terms of the goals. And I think this is a fantastic forum to really get that message out there, that from the mining perspective, in spite of our historical reputation, we can do things better, and I think we are doing things better. And at the end of the day, we are ready and willing to play a pivotal role in this transition, and a critical role, and that's a necessary role. And we just look forward to your continued consumer support for making, keeping that level high, ensuring that we are always doing our best and always doing what's best for the environment and for our future generations.
Thanks, Phil. Belinda, 30 seconds or less. Message to the audience.
I would say, this is about disruption. Disruption also happens here. It happens when you leave this room and you say, what am I going to do tomorrow to change the game. And I'm very proud of working in the raw natural resources business as a Canadian. And I think we need to create we need to learn from consumer brands how to create trust between the lithium producer, graphite, cobalt, our product, and the consumer. We need to be at the mall. We need to be showing what we do in places where the community is from their lens, not ours, which means talking to people outside our sector about what we do and being proud of it.
Cool. Kwasi, message to the audience?
Yeah, so I think the road to net zero 2050, 2060 would run through a mine, right? But then before that road runs through a mine, miners would have to do the right thing, decarbonize their operations, and also operate sustainably, right? And I learned this a few weeks ago about the plastic industry. Nobody could have imagined a few decades ago, plastic would be one of the biggest enemies of society, right? Because it makes our life easy. You get your groceries, you put it in plastic. But plastic industry failed to meet the moment. And what happens? Now, in almost every country, there's conversations about banning plastic, irrespective of the big role it plays in the industry. So to miners, what I say is that we need to adapt. The battery industry is like it's Silicon Valley, basically. When the industry hit a roadblock with cobalt, what did they do? It wasn't about supply, it wasn't about lamenting, it was just out-innovate cobalt out of batteries. And that is what will happen if miners do not ensure that that road that goes through them is decarbonized as well. Thank you for your audience.
Okay, Renata.
Very quickly, because I spoke too much already. Thank you, everybody, and let's move into action. We are the real disruptors, and we can change this country, we can change the world.
Thanks, everyone, and that was it for us. Thank you.